Welcome everyone. My name is Sean. I am back from the motherland, from Puerto Rico, where I was definitely looking for the New York Democrats who are ruining my city and my state and happened to be there at the same time that I was on vacation. Wait a minute, I was not on vacation. Any assertion that I was on vacation is defamation. And yeah, today what we're gonna do is talk about a video that was posted while I was on the island. By the way, had an absolutely wonderful time. I really appreciate all the well wishes I got from you guys out there in the audience. And this video is a response video from a guy called Actual Jake, who is trying to prove that I'm this evil white racist that's filled with evil white racism because I dared to predict that eventually Zorhan Mamdani would pull a Sadiq Khan, in that he would start off downplaying his religion throughout his campaign, and then eventually he would start complaining about how everything and anything is Islamophobia. Now, of course, I predicted this back in July. I told you exactly what he was going to do, and then he did this shortly before the election happened, an election that he ultimately ended up winning. So, I mean, my video is like 100% sage, accurate, wonderful, beautiful, and perfect, but Actual Jake has big problems with it. Chief among those problems is that I am this very much religious Christian, and in reality, if you guys don't know, because this is a very Christian channel where I Bible thump the crap out of you, Christians are just as bad as Muslims. Their terrorism is actually worse than Muslims, and that is something that you guys need to understand, because Actual Jake is an atheist that's trapped in like 2014 woke era timeline where he's trying to say, you know, but religions that are brown people based, even if they act worse than, you know, the Christian religion, that's not something that we could ever talk about because those are cultural differences. And Actual Jake is going to set you straight because he's an anti-theist who, of course, gets down on his knees and worships Muslims because they can do nothing wrong because it's a religion of color. Basically, he replaced religion in his life with wokeness. It's absolutely embarrassing. So we're gonna have a good time all around making fun of this absolute idiot. But before we get into that, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay?
I was going to skip this black screen thing because I don't think it's a very engaging start to a video. But Actual Justice Warrior does, who made the video. It's called Mamdani Goes Mask Off, but I was just about to skip through, and I heard this, so I have to play it for you too, YouTube audience.
Previously on Dragon Ball Z.
Everything is just... it's so cringe. The fascists are cringe. I don't know why. Like, this is the kind of dork that ideologically right now, the things he thinks are being put into place as policy because a bunch of lead chip eating boomers have gained power. You think that was an AI voice prompter? Great.
So right off the top, Actual Jake spends an entire minute complaining about the fact that the setup to my previous clip from back in July, where I predicted exactly what Mamdani would do. By the way, the video is me proving it with Mamdani's own clip, so I actually predicted it accurately, but I set it up with a previously on Dragon Ball Z clip, and this very much bothers Actual Jake for some indiscernible reason, and yeah, he's just upset about it, and then somebody in his chat says, I think he used an AI voice generator in order to get that clip, which is such a stupid, pointless, like, allegation, or alization, as the super mayor would call it.
False allegations and not facts.
Because why would I need AI generation in order to get a previously on Dragon Ball Z clip when that was, like, at the beginning of almost every episode of Dragon Ball Z? I just pulled it from a YouTube video because it's, like, an iconic thing that people remember when they're around my age and they used to watch the show on Toonami. But okay, not off to the best start, not exactly the most wonderfulest criticism, but let's see where it goes from here. Let's see what Jake's got.
This guy is a Christian, and I don't think you're any different from a Muslim, frankly. I think Christians are exactly the same. They just do their terrorism in a different way. They might not be willing to, do the famous acts of terrorism, like blow up planes and like die in the process, or like have bombs or whatever strapped to them, but they'll go into holy war and die as a soldier with bullets and knives and be right up in. I don't know what the difference is functionally.
So as you guys fully understand and fully know, this is obviously a very Christian show. In fact, you could see the crucifix nailed up on this brick wall if I only just tilted the camera up slightly, but I'm not going to do that right now at this moment because you guys all understand that the main component of this show is for me to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ to you guys out there in the audience. It's not like I've stated that I'm an atheist multiple different times on this channel. It's not like some of you in the comments don't complain about me being an atheist because you happen to be religious and that bothers you, but definitely 100% actual Jake is not just talking out of his ass for about 5 minutes at the beginning of this video about how I'm a very much bad Christian man and Christianity scares him just as much as Islam, because I don't know if you guys know this, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, Christians do their terrorism just like the Muslims, in fact worse than the Muslims, they just do it slightly differently. A perfect example of this is when Matt Stone and Trey Parker made fun of Mormons with the Mormon episode of South Park and then the musical, The Book of Mormon. You actually find Mormons outside of where that musical is playing, and they try to give you the copy of the Book of Mormon and say, hey, you saw the show, now learn more about the faith, because they take that as an opportunity to recruit people.
I don't know what the difference is functionally.
Now, if you compare and contrast that to Muslims who had an absolute freak out over Matt and Trey trying to depict Muhammad in the legendary episodes 200 and 201, and their response was slightly different, but still on the same scale. I mean, they posted the address of Matt Stone and Trey Parker, they threatened to kill him, they referenced other people who were murdered for depicting Muhammad, and of course, we know that that episode is still up to this very day, just in the same way that the Mormon musical, The Book of Mormon, is successful and still on Broadway. Oh wait, it was pulled, and in fact, past episodes where South Park made fun of Muslims and depicted Muhammad were also pulled retroactively, and this is not an isolated incident. In fact, Muslims shot up the Charlie Hebdo paper in Paris, if you guys remember that, but I'm sure this is very much the same thing. Again, Mormons, they give out the Book of Mormon outside of the Book of Mormon. Muslims, they put a bullet in your head when you try to depict Muhammad.
Just like you're less brave than a Muslim, I guess. Like you're less convicted than Muslim terrorists, I suppose. But of course, if you're a Muslim, you're a terrorist. This is what they do. So I, as an anti-theist, am less extreme than just how religions treat each other. I have learned this over the years because I'm an anti-theist. I think religion is actively bad for you. It's not benign. It's obviously a bad thing. It's a delusion that people use as a poor basis of thought, and then from that foundation, everything fractures. You can watch the web of thought from the very idea of like God controls everything, and I'm a sinner. It just goes crazy. It's a domino effect. It's so harmful.
Guys, I'm not kidding. This guy goes on an entire 5-minute unprompted rant about how Christians are so bad because I guess they called him gay in like the year 2020 or something of the sort, and that really bothered him. But obviously he has no idea of what he's talking about. He doesn't understand scale, and I'm all about scale. That's why I keep a tape measure by my bed, in my car, and within arm's reach in this studio in case I get too excited about something that I'm responding to. And it's just pathetic. Again, this is like back in the day when TYT did that video on the Cologne sexual assaults on New Year's Eve, and you had Jimmy Dore going into hyper defensive mode of Muslims, even though again, this was like a massive groping by Muslims on New Year's Eve, something Germany had almost never seen before in its entire history. Maybe when the Soviets invaded, it was a bit worse then. Look that up for yourselves. And yeah, it's just embarrassing to see somebody who is an anti-theist, a harsh critic of religion, just bend over backwards for the Muslims because, oh my god, religion of color. So sad that people are Islamophobic. Oh my god, how dare they be concerned about the beliefs and actions and behaviors associated with that religion.
But of course, if you're a Muslim, you're a terrorist. This is what they do.
Also, in a throwback to a very cowardly line of argumentation, actual Jake is doing the, are you saying it's all Muslims? Are you saying all Muslims are terrorists? Because, you know, that's horrible. He's saying that all of them are terrorists, and obviously that's not true.
You're going, I don't know. The implication of you being a Muslim is that you're a suicide bomber. Like, it's not very tongue-in-cheek. That's pretty much what it always is. The implication, you wearing a hijab? Do you got a bomb strapped to you? It's like that thin. It's just racism.
No, Jake, I did not say all Muslims are terrorists. This is you trying to reconcile the fact that you are allegedly an anti-theist, but also you're willing to bend over backwards to excuse the problems with Islam. So you have to try to straw man my argument by saying that I'm claiming it's all when I am saying not all. Do I need to pull a Devin Tracy and put the not all sticker on the video for the rest of the video so you can understand it? I know you're a bit slow. I know you think I'm throwing Bibles at everybody from this seat right here, but I assure you I'm actually not doing so. But you're not really all that informed. But just in case you're confused, I'll leave this up for a little longer. And if you don't read English very well, that says not all, not 100%. In fact, I never said 100%. Can we get past that? Can we get to level 1 of the conversation? Or are you still stuck on level 0? Again, not all. Didn't say all. In fact, later on in this video, which you kind of breeze past, I specifically talk about how American Muslims are actually the most chill of Muslims across the world from my experience, from what we look at in terms of the polling data on what they actually believe. But just in case you're confused, Jake, I said not all. Not 100%. Are you following? Are you still ranting about me being this Christian fascist that's just throwing the Bible at everybody?
I don't think, like, Mamdani being a Muslim, like, coming from a Muslim culture, like an Islamic culture, like, every policy he advocates for is secular in nature, and he seems to have a clear delineation between those things in his head and his rhetoric and his policy as a member of the city council and everything. I think it's fine. We can have diverse thought.
So first of all, Zohran Mamdani is a socialist. That is my chief problem with him. Make no mistake about it. I've talked about it probably more than anybody on the internet.com who's covered the Mamdani election. But secondly, actual Jake is basically unbroken in his streak of being wrong about absolutely everything, because Zohran Mamdani is not in the city council. He's in the state assembly. In fact, one of the criticisms that you will often find in my videos, something you might want to look into before you do a response to me, know the basics about what I actually believe before you just shoot off at the mouth like an absolute idiot, is the fact that I have pointed out multiple times that Zohran Mamdani is running for New York City mayor, now is the mayor-elect. He's claiming that he wants to raise taxes that, by the way, need to be raised at the state level. However, as a state assembly person, he's never proposed the bills in order to raise those taxes that, again, need to be raised at the state level, what you would do in the state assembly. And now as mayor, he's doing the trick that we always see New York City mayors do, which is say, oh, I might not be able to get that done because of those bastards over at the state legislature. But that's his current job right now. That's where he's at this moment. He could actually start proposing the bills that could actually get his agenda through right now at this moment, but he's not doing so. So that's a policy criticism. I know you might think that's Islamophobia. I know you're trying to prove that I'm an evil white racist throughout the course of this video, but again, some basic understanding of the candidate that you're sucking off and the criticism that he's faced throughout the entire campaign would be useful for you right now at this moment, Jake.
6 years ago, shortly after I announced I was running for assembly, a well-meaning Muslim uncle pulled me aside. He smiled softly and looked at me with care.
Can I just mention this small little tidbit here, just because there's a mini controversy going on right now, where, not even a controversy, they're trying very hard to get any dirt on Zohran Mamdani because he's obviously crushing this, and they're just trying anything they can do at this point, try to prevent the inevitable. And they're saying, oh, he called someone his aunt, but it's actually her cousin. He just did this to just a guy in his community. He just calls him an uncle. Like, this is just such a cultural thing. Anyway, it's just more racism.
In a quiet voice, he told me I did not have to tell people I was Muslim. His eyes kind, his beard proud.
So right here, actual Jake tries to smuggle in a premise that it's racist to question who Zohran Mamdani was referring to when he said his aunt was afraid to wear a hijab after 9/11, after it was proven that his aunt was not even in the country before or in the years after 9/11, and by the way, is a Muslim who doesn't even wear a hijab. And actual Jake tries to preempt this criticism, even though he's going to cut off my video before I go over this, by saying, oh, it's a cultural thing. Oh, but Muslims and non-whites, they call all these different various people aunts and uncles, and that's just something that white people, you just don't understand. You just don't get it. You're not following it at all, which is hilarious because one of the things that I make fun of is bitch-made white people like Jake right here who go on to say, oh, well, it's just something that white people can't understand. We don't get this possibility that you could refer to somebody as an aunt or not, in order to deflect from the fact that Mamdani was caught lying about Islamophobia in order to further victimize himself. And by the way, I just want to point out that this was predicted by Ryan Gerdusky in this tweet, and all the lefties are falling in line and doing this because Jake's actual religion is wokeness, which in part is worship of the non-white, worship of the foreigner.
In a quiet voice, he told me I did not have to tell people I was Muslim. His eyes kind, his beard proud, and his face heavy with the implication of the unsaid.
Now, I forgot to make commentary on the fact that Mamdani said his beard was proud in that particular clip right there, and I just want to point out that Zoran Mamdani said that his beard was proud. He said that as a thing. That was a sentence that came out of his face. So let's just go into the rest of this, but acknowledge that he said his beard was proud. With early voting already happening right now, he's going to win the race for New York City mayor.
Dude, I know I sped this up a little bit, but his, the timbre in his voice, the panic, he's like, a socialist is gonna, oh god, it's a socialist.
I probably should have kept a count on the side of the screen of how many things actual Jake was gonna get wrong throughout the course of this video, but the fact that he just complained about the timbre in my voice, like when you chop down a tree and yell timber instead of the timbre, the word that he was actually looking for, that he likely never heard anybody say, that he was trying to pull out of his ass in order to sound smart, even though he just sounds incredibly stupid, is absurd for a number of reasons. First and foremost, this guy sounds like he has trepidation in his voice. He sounds incredibly weak when he talks, when he's like, oh, I'm so scared of the Christians. I'm an actual justice warrior, very Christian on this channel. Again, very bitch made in his tone. My tone is not different at all whatsoever from how I normally talk, because I understand that, yeah, Mamdani's likely to win, but you know what? We have the governor's race in 2026, and hopefully the fact that Governor Kathy Hochul endorsed this guy is used against her in order to unseat her in the 2026 gubernatorial race. Again, I'm not panicked about the fact that Mamdani is elected as my mayor. I understand that there are negative consequences of that. And while I don't want my fellow New Yorkers to suffer, hopefully those consequences can lead to better electoral outcomes in 4 years when we have another mayoral election.
The timbre in his voice.
But I'll be sure to watch the timbre in my voice, because actual Jake has definitely spotted that. He definitely saw that timbre in my tone, and it's just absolutely devastating, and it just shows that I'm so sad and so distressed about this whole situation.
So here's the thing that they're scared of, and it's the thing that they've always been scared of. This is why Vietnam happened in Korea. Anytime, and everything in South America, including right now, anytime socialism gets a foothold of power, they get really scared. Like the powers that be, they were really scared because they know it's gonna work, and it does work every single time.
So actual Jake, our anti-theist, our rational thinker, our person who looks at the facts and the evidence, just showed us that he is an economic flat earther. He's like, the reason they're scared, the reason they're afraid is because socialism works everywhere it's been tried, and he knows this for sure because actual Jake is from Earth 2, where the red light means go and the green light means stop. Like, what the hell are you even talking about? And the fact that this guy actually had the gall to cite North Korea as an example, he's like, this is what they were scared of in Korea. Well, North Korea is your communist paradise. It is your experiment. And I will bet you $1 million that you would rather live in South Korea than in North Korea, a much more advanced civilization, much more successful than its northern counterpart. But yeah, that's actually what you're going to right now. Now, of course, he also mentioned Vietnam, another war that was fought. The country, unfortunately, did not get split in half in that particular circumstance. However, over time, the Vietnamese have kind of opened themselves up to a bunch of American products, and we've actually kind of won them over through trade, through capitalist goods, which is wonderful. But yeah, socialism has never worked. This is the most obvious thing ever. I don't understand what his examples are of it being successful and how he can actually say North Korea, this is what they were terrified over there. Yeah, of the dictatorial regime oppressing the people in the South. Yeah, we were worried about that. We were concerned about that. The suffering of the North is in fact concerning. The secular humanist right here doesn't seem to care about that at all whatsoever. But North Korea is the successful version of that equation, according to this absolute idiot.
Because We need stuff. You don't need to commodify everything, decommodify necessities, and suddenly the whole world blooms. But what that does is it disturbs and disrupts a hierarchy that has been put into place. And so some people have to tumble down to a mere millionaire or something. No, I can't be a billionaire. I can only be a multi-millionaire. I don't like it. I need more control. They think they can like transcend something because they have accrued the most points in the U.S. financial game. But someday, hopefully, without catastrophe, but hopefully, we can see that this obvious game of numbers should be relegated to just that. A frivolous thing that you opt into to have fun. You can gamble, you can buy stuff you don't need, you can, go have fun. I don't mind if capitalism or markets in general, because it wouldn't be capitalism. I don't mind if markets in general are just a fun place we go hang out, because I like the idea of having a little point system and going and buying stuff. I like it.
I don't even know how to respond to this. This is the ramblings of an absolute idiot who adopted a political ideology as his new religion and can't quite articulate it. He's like, I want us to be able to go visit markets. Not a capitalism. That's absolutely terrible. I mean, it's the greatest system that has lifted more people out of poverty than anything else in human history. Advanced civilization, life expectancy, and all that. But yeah, we need to go to the socialism because it's worked every single time it's been tried. It's never failed, guys. It's always a 10 out of 10, absolutely perfect in every possible way, according to actual Jake.
Stuff. I like it, but not when your survival is at stake. And I don't think we should couple those things. Easy to undo. We can have our cake and eat it too. It's very simple. It's a matter of just available resources, and we have all of that.
Like, seriously, what are we even listening to here? We're 7 minutes in, and he's trying to prove that I'm some evil white racist, and I'm waiting for the proof of the evil white racism. And of course, Zohar Mamdani ended up taking it a step further, making the case that Muslims, and we're not talking about Muslims that were in the Twin Towers, but Muslims in general, were the real victims of the September 11th attacks.
Why is this they try to twist that? So instead of hearing like, hey, Islamophobia is a problem, they go, no, they were the actual victims of 9/11. How about 9/11 was one day that happened, and the subsequent cleanup essentially is part of that, that had incredible political ripples that aren't just about who died? It's broader than that. I think your minds are too slim. Yes, how about there are more than one kind of victim? How about the severity to which you are a victim is also different for each individual? Some people died immediately. Some people had to jump out of the buildings. Who's more of a victim? I think the jumper more of a victim than the person who died instantly in the plane. Not a victim, definitely a victim, deserved not to do that. So are we splitting hairs here? So I think 20 plus years later, we could acknowledge that, hey, this exacerbated community-wide Islamophobia in obvious ways that can be addressed and still ripple through clearly right now.
So one of the things that's impressive about people like Jake is that they managed to do response videos, which should be the easiest thing in the world because you have all the time to take to actually look into the claims, watch the video all the way through, and not fall into the traps of said video because, again, the video can't argue back. But they managed to fail repeatedly because they're so blinded by their ideology. Again, this guy has a religious devotion to leftism, so he just did the thing that I make fun of later on in this video with a Norm Macdonald clip where he talks about how, the real issue with 9/11 is the blowback on the innocent Muslims, or the real issue of Islamic terror is in fact the blowback on Muslims, which is the exact thing that I was pointing out that these people always do, and he does it in the video. Let me jump to where he plays that clip.
I can't say my friend's name, but he said his biggest fear is that ISIS or some terrorist group like that will get a hold of a dirty bomb and explode it over a major city within the United States and kill tens of millions of people. Because then the blowback against innocent Muslims would be absolutely terrible.
Yes, that's right.
That's true.
Honestly, Norm, you're gone too soon. Your words of wisdom are absolutely as sage now as they were when you said them. And
this is just like the book I'm reading where the U.S. blows up the world to preempt Iran doing it. Yeah. Did we listen to the same clip? I don't think so.
And again, this goes completely over his head that he just did the thing that Norm Macdonald was making fun of in that clip.
I have not learned the lesson that he had been taught, time and again. It is the lesson that safety could only be found in the shadows of our city. That it is in those shadows alone where Muslims could embrace the fullness of our own identities. And that if we are to emerge from them, then it is in those shadows where we must leave our faith. These are lessons that so many Muslim New Yorkers have been taught.
So if you spend any time around these topics on the internet.com, somebody in your comments will definitely 100% at some point bring up the taqiyya, which is a concept in Islam where Muslims are permitted to lie and conceal their faith in order to, not get persecuted or something of the sort. Now,
are you being conspiratorial right now?
oftentimes when people leave these comments, what they're actually saying is that Muslims are lying in order to appear that they're assimilating into the countries that they're in until eventually they gain enough power in order to implement their agenda. So
yes, the answer is yes. This is the Jews control everything, but instead it's a twist. The Muslims are trying. Just super racism.
That's just super racism. I don't know if you guys know that. That's super racism, that he talked about this concept in Islam where they're able to conceal their faith, or they're permitted to conceal their faith in order to avoid oppression or targeting or anything of the sort. Now, of course, Jake, again, not a very good listener, because what I'm talking about is how I'll often receive comments that talk about this concept in Islam, and specifically I'll get those comments when I'm critiquing somebody like Cenk Uygur, who of course is an atheist, who then identifies as a Muslim for political reasons, and people will say, no, Sean, he's only pretending to be an atheist in order to forward the goals of Islam. And in fact, this is an ongoing joke on this channel, and I often end up pronouncing the taqiyya like the tazini or the tahini or some kind of variant in order to make fun of the people in the comments. But the point of me talking about this is that the older guy is saying that he thinks Mamdani might experience oppression, so he's reminding him of this concept under Islamic law that he can conceal his faith throughout the course of the campaign. So what I'm actually saying is that the more radical or conspiratorial interpretation of the taqiyya that I often hear about in the comments is not even where you need to go in order to understand what this older Muslim allegedly told Zohran Mamdani when he started the mayoral campaign. So Jake, just no good at listening, no good at research, wrong again. I don't know how many times he's gonna just get everything 100% backwards and wrong, but he did say super racist against the religion of Islam. You're evil white racist with your evil white racism.
There must be something about the way he communicates and the way he puts out videos consistently, because right-wingers, I mean, they don't love this guy, but I mean, he's got success on YouTube to the extent that it's probably his job, right? So like, especially with Patreon and stuff.
So then Jake comments on my success on YouTube, which thank you very much. And he says, oh, it's probably his job, especially with Patreon and whatnot. It's my job without Patreon. It's my job without the member support that I get over on actualjusticewarrior.com/join, or the one-time donations via PayPal or Venmo. And yes, this is a very sneaky advertisement for all of you who want to support the channel. But yeah, it is my job. This is what I do for a living. That's what happens when you're actually successful and you can draw in an audience, Jake. Maybe you should look into that. I do find it interesting that what Mamdani is describing right here is something that is put upon Muslims externally, even though, again, this is directly drawn from their faith. It is a tactic that they deploy. And again, in the best reading of this particular tactic, it is something that permits Muslims, in order to shield themselves, to avoid oppression from the majority group. But again, Mamdani's like, this is just a lesson that you have to learn in the city of New York, such an evil white racist place filled with evil white racism, because, oh my God, it's been...
He didn't say any of that. Are you going to, the stance here is that you're having to defend is that you don't think Islamophobia is bad in New York City? Like, do you think Islamophobia is a real thing? Probably not, right? He would just reject the premise. You don't think people are just racist towards Muslims irrationally? He thinks it's rational because he's Islamophobic. Like in New York City, where 9/11 occurred, have you ever heard about that? I would imagine it's probably one of the worst places for this social phenomenon to occur, right? You would expect it. Christians lie all the time. Well, of course, but he doesn't give a. He thinks the sneaky Muslims are trying to bomb him. That's what he's literally just race baiting.
So now Jake, who has accused me of saying all Muslims are terrorists or suicide bombers, is getting mad when I'm talking about the obvious implication from Zohran Mamdani. And by the way, when he says it is implied from what his uncle said that there's so much racism and bigotry against Muslims that it's okay and you might have to actually conceal your faith while running for mayor of New York City. He's like, well, he didn't say that specifically. He didn't say those specific words, yet this guy has been ranting for half the video video about how I'm a very strong Christian, which I've never said. In fact, I've said the opposite. I'm an atheist. And he's been saying that I call all Muslims terrorists, which again, I've never said. And in fact, I specifically go out of my way in this video to talk about how Muslims in the United States of America are significantly more chill than probably anywhere in the world. But right here, he draws the line. He's like, he never said that. He never said that specifically. He never said evil white racists specifically right there. I mean, he does have past tweets where he complains about how white people are so racist and terrible, but he never said it right there in this particular moment. By the way, this is a ridiculous, absurd concept that we see play out time and time again. Every single time there is an Islamic terror attack in the United States of America or in the Western world, somehow we end up on the topic of, guess what? Islamophobia. Muslims most impacted. It doesn't matter who gets hurt, who gets killed, what stupid portion of their ideology ended up motivating that particular attack.
There are more Christian terrorist attacks in the United States than Muslim ones. What is he even thinking of?
So first of all, this is just embarrassing in every way. Actual Jake right here is pulling up this chart from Cato about how there are more Christian terror attacks in the United States of America than Muslim ones, even though, by the way, this chart doesn't actually say that. In fact, it says that there are more right-wing attacks, or actually deaths from right-wing terror attacks, when you exclude September 11th, a giant outlier event, than there are from Muslims or other sources. And this is what he's trying to throw at me as a counterpoint, and obviously it proves a couple of things. First and foremost, that this guy does not understand what per capita means. I know it's a bit confusing because Christians are a much more significant portion of the American population than are Muslims, who are about 1%, and yet their terror attacks, excluding 9/11, according to this chart, represent a significant portion of this chart. Now, I've criticized this chart, by the way, in multiple ways before, one of which is the fact that you have a major outlier event like September 11th excluded, because the chart would be overwhelming deaths from Islamic terror since 1975, but you have the Oklahoma City bombing, which killed nearly 200 people, included in the right-wing attacks. And by the way, Timothy McVeigh was a Christian, I believe. I also think he was angry about Waco. I believe the anger about Waco was more of the motivation there, but we can group that in if you want. That's totally fine. But just so you know, this chart is deliberately designed to maximize the category of the right, and of course limit the category of Islamist terrorism deaths. But in addition to that, even on its own, taken at face value, this shows us that Muslims are significantly a greater threat to the United States of America per capita in terms of terrorism than the right. If you add all of these numbers up on this particular chart, you arrive at a total of 620, and these are murders via terrorism or motivated by political ideology. Now, Christians, their population right now, this is going to matter a little bit later, are about 62% according to the internet.com, and 62% of this total number is 384.4. Now, if you go back to the chart, what you see is that the grand total for the right, which Jake is substituting for Christians, is 391. So this is pretty much in line with the current population, what you would expect if everything was distributed evenly. But again, I will point out that back in 1975, when this chart started, there were way more Christians as a percentage of the population than 62% than what we see right now. So in reality, Christians are underrepresented if you substitute, again, right-wing motivation for Christians like Jake did throughout the whole course of this particular chart. But bare minimum, they're about equally represented to what you would expect. And that's if you ignore the fact that when this chart started back in 1975, the American population was 90% identified as Christians. But again, we're setting that aside at this moment in time. Now, the Muslim population of the United States of America is 1% of our total population. Maybe it's up around like 1.25%, but for the sake of argument, we'll leave it at 1% because historically it was lower, basically non-existent back in 1975. And when you find 1% of 620, which you get by just moving the decimal point over 2 slots, you will discover that that is 6.2. But on this chart right here, it says 143, which means that Muslims per capita are 23 times more likely to commit an act of terrorism that results in the death of somebody than their population. So their per capita rates significantly higher. So actual Jake, being the actual idiot that he is, just showed us his chart that shows that Muslims are significantly more dangerous per capita in terms of ideological motivation / terrorism deaths in the United States of America. And again, that's when we exclude 9/11, when we exclude the big one that is not excluded in terms of the Oklahoma City bombing on the right wing, which again, he's substituting for Christian side of the ledger. In addition to that, I will also point out that in the right wing data, as we have discovered when we actually dove into this previously, is that you actually have cases that would not be counted as ideologically motivated killings if they were done by any other group but white people. For instance, in the ADL's reports, we often find gang violence from the Aryan Nation against other gang members, even if they're white, over drug debts included in ideologically motivated homicides. We also will find domestic violence. For instance, if an Aryan Nation person is getting divorced and he doesn't like the wife getting custody of the kids and he kills the wife and the kids and a murder-suicide, then that all gets counted as right-wing terrorism, even though that would obviously not apply to any other group. Now, these are all tactics utilized to inflate the numbers of right-wing murders, right-wing violence, right-wing terrorism. But again, even if you ignore all of that and you just take this chart at face value and then you look into the per capita rates according to population, what you find out is that Christians / right-wingers, because Jake is just grouping them together, are not out of proportion with their current population. Again, we're ignoring the fact that they used to be 90% plus on the 1975 side of this chart, and Muslims are 23 times higher than their population.
What crimes has he really been bothered with in the last 25 years?
The issue always becomes, the conversation always turns to...
It's just 9/11? Never forget to remember 9/11.
No, it's not just 9/11. In fact, it's a chart that you put up that specifically excluded 9/11.
Very few instances. Almost none. Obvious spike. And he's like, well, that's all, that should be. And now we have a background radiation of much higher than before, and this only goes to 2010 when it spikes. I guarantee you, I guess I have to look it up. Let's see if we can find Muslim hate crimes after the Trump administration, and if they go up. Do you think they do? Also, does this count Sikh and Indian people who white racists think are Muslim? No, it only counts if you are actually Muslim and you get hate crime. It doesn't count if racists mistake you. Since the 2017 inauguration with Donald Trump, it has gone up.
So I knew Jake was one of the lowest level thinkers on the internet.com, but this criticism is so dishonest and stupid, it needs to be addressed. So right now, if you guys are paying attention, Jake is calling me dishonest for putting up a chart that covers the span from 1998 to 2010 that covers anti-Muslim hate incidents. And by the way, he has this stupid offhanded complaint about whether or not this ends up covering the anti-Sikh crimes, which people end up confusing Sikhs for Muslims and then commit hate crimes against them, even though this data absolutely does. He could just look it up for himself. But he also is very upset that this chart doesn't extend to modern times, but the topic that we're talking about, again, Jake, try to stay focused on the topic that we're discussing, is the post 9/11 anti-Muslim hate instances. So the reason it covers this specific period, which gives you a couple of years prior to 9/11 and the decade after 9/11, is because that's the time period that we're talking about. That is the discussion right here. If I was making a point about anti-Muslim hate instances in the 2020s, I would highlight that particular section of the data in order to discuss that particular topic. Do you see how that works? Do you understand? Are you following what we're talking about right now? This is not me being deceptive. This is me specifically saying Mamdani's talking about anti-Muslim hate instances post 9/11, reports of these instances, and then showing you the data of the time period that he's referring to. And by the way, about 6 or 7 years beyond said time period, because he's talking about the post 9/11 anti-Islamic hate. And as you can see, obviously it spiked after September 11th. By the way, that's an even more devastating spike than you can possibly imagine, because if you think about it, 9/11 happened on September 11th, which means most of the year it was probably as normal as you saw it in the year 2000, and then it all spiked up in the last couple of months. But again, again, this is not deceptive. I'm not hiding the ball. Mamdani mentioned this specific period, so I pulled up a chart to cover this specific period.
Literally, if you're able to show past 2010, when Trump gets in office, you can already see the rise coming, and you know why you stopped. I guess what you're counting on, and you can count on it, is definitely that your right-wing gang isn't going to check it out. Oh, look at that. We got up to 2016 on this one. Uh-oh. That 2010 mark, 63, 55, 55, 58, 56, 91, 127. Whoa, it just gets higher. I wonder if it kept going, what you would see. I wonder if we could get further into the Trump administration, what you would see. Higher than 2001. He's like, yeah, but that's 9/11. Higher.
So in order to try to debunk a point that I was not making and prove that I'm being deceptive, even though I wasn't, I was talking about the very same time period Mamdani was highlighting, Jake pulls up this chart from another source that cites FBI data on assaults, simple and aggravated, and he says, look, it was actually higher in 2016. Orange man bad. Trump bad, everyone.
Trump bad. Trump bad.
Higher. Great job. Actual justice warrior, more like edited justice.
Yeah, those numbers are not actually higher. Let me explain why you're an absolute idiot, Jake. So first and foremost, we can assume that the post 9/11 assaults happened after 9/11. So again, 9/11 was in September 11th, if you guys are confused about the date, of 2001. And prior to 2001, in the year 2000, what we saw was about one anti-Muslim assault a month in this country. So it wouldn't be a crazy assumption that for the first 8 months of 2001, we saw something similar. So about 8 of the assaults that we would see based on the pattern from the previous year, again, unless data would indicate otherwise, which means we have 85 assaults in the last 4 months of the year after September 11th. And yeah, that would be about 20 assaults a month compared to what we see in 2016, which is about 10. So again, I know based on the way he was unable to detect per capita rates in that previous chart that he's not good with numbers, but 20 a month post 9/11, which is what we would expect based on the fact that it wasn't that common prior to 9/11, higher than about 10 a month in 2016. So yeah, you're just wrong about everything. It's actually quite impressive how stupid you are. Now, I'll also point out that my chart actually covers a much broader range of things other than assaults. As you can see, there's over 500 instances because that covers hate instances, not just simple and aggravated assaults. But Jake also seems to not be able to understand that distinction, which again is unsurprising. He's an absolute idiot. He's desperately looking for a win over me, and he pathetically failed and flopped on his face because, again, the guy doesn't think.
Warrior? Does he still get to be a warrior?
Instances of this actually occurring. And in fact, Jewish Americans experience way more religiously motivated hate incidents. And I also want to point out,
no, they don't. They just literally don't.
Now look, I don't mean to be the guy to judge the timbre in somebody's voice. That's Jake's job to judge that timbre. But I do want to point out that the way that he says, no, they don't, and they just don't, is one of the most mealy-mouthed, weak ways humanly possible. And again, he could just pull up the data. Anybody can. Over half of the religiously motivated hate crimes are committed against the Jews. And by the way, in recent years, that has gone up to nearly 70%. Again, you can find this FBI data. Anyone can see it for themselves. And again, it shouldn't even be that surprising. We're talking about right now, at this moment in time, what the backlash was to Muslims in the United States post 9/11. Well, post October 7th, with the current Israeli-Gaza war that is going on, there is a negative backlash against Israel, which often is something that trickles down to Jewish populations in the United States of America. So nobody should be shocked by this. But Jake's like, no, the Muslims are the biggest victims in the entire world. Biggest victims in the United States of America. I'm not going to look up the data. Trust me, bro. I'm somebody who is all about rational thought. Don't listen to the Christian man, actual justice warrior over there, who I keep trying to debunk with numbers that actually prove me wrong. Now look, there is more of this ridiculously stupid response video to me that you guys can check out for yourself. It will be linked in the description. But as of right now, I'm going to leave it here. Maybe I will touch upon this in just a little bit in the future. Who knows? I could be doing anything in the next video, but as of right now, I'm gonna say if you like this video, then show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on the social medias, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about actual Jake failing miserably in order to prove that I'm a horrible, dastardly racist. Till next time.